Hey guys, Jesse here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Master Grade Deathscythe EW, otherwise known as Mr. Hajime Kotoki's little redesign of the TV version of the Deathscythe. This is the version that most people don't build or can't even find just because the Deathscythe Hell Custom or the Deathscythe Hell EW, as it's canonically known now, is just so vastly more popular than this design that stores just don't stock this one. So he's really hard. He's actually quite hard to find. Now, luckily, my local hobby store, for whatever reason, decided to buy a bunch of these rather than a bunch of Hell Customs. So fortunately, I was able to find mine for a reasonable price. And I've actually been wanting this kit for a very long time. I really like the design of this version of the Deathscythe. As you guys know, I don't like wings on my kits, and putting giant bat wings on a Gundam is pretty high up there in the things I don't like on my Gundams list. So I got this one, and I'm really glad to have it. And unfortunately, it's also a really nice kit. It's from 2010, so it is a little dated, mainly in its details. Its articulation is absolutely fantastic, but as you can see, if you take a real close look, you're not going to see a lot of panel lines on this guy. Personally, I think that's a good thing for these wing kits because wing kits by design are very elaborate and elegant, and I mean just giant spiky knees, giant spiky feet, giant angel wings, giant Gatling guns, you know, all that crazy stuff. And I think if you add too much detail, then it kind of takes away from the overall silhouette of the design of the wing kit. So less is more kind of in this circumstance. So let's go ahead and get him spinning here and I'll talk more about him. Now, all I've done to this kit is straight build him, added the decals, and hit him with a top coat. I know in my unboxing I said I would repaint the darker plastic to black, but in the end I ended up liking the bluish gray quite a bit, so I ended up just keeping that color. The only things I painted on this kit are the cameras and the eyes. Aside from that, what you're seeing is what you get in the box. So, and I do really like the colors on this kit. I think that orange, yellow, it's far more orange than it is yellow. It's just such a nice color. And the bluish gray is also quite nice. It's kind of this nice little in-between of being too dark and being too light. I think it's just perfect. Now, the first couple things people want to know when it comes to a dark kit are how about are the nubs and how do the decals look? Well, for the decals, since I have them on the kit, I'll let you be the judge of whether or not it's acceptable or not. When we get in closer, you'll see exactly how they look. Fortunately, all the decals on the shoulders and the backpack are all dry transfers, so those are going to look great. But the chest, the arms, and the feet are all the regular sticker decals. So I think they're acceptable as long as you hit them with a matte top coat. Otherwise, you will see the outlines quite badly if it's just on the bare plastic. But like I said, I'll let you guys decide whether or not they look all right. And as for the nubs, this kit's from 2010, and around that time, Bandai was not concerned with hiding the nubs. So they're pretty big and they're in really, really out and open spots. So if you know your proper nub removal technique, which you would if you follow my tutorial, which I have right here up in this corner, then you'll be perfectly fine. Just remove the nub like you would on any other kit and you'll be just fine. But if your nub removal skills aren't really up to snuff and they need a little bit of working on, then I would hold off on building really any dark kit until you're able to reliably and consistently remove nubs without leaving nub marks. Because like I said, the nubs on this kit are quite large, the gates are quite large, and they're just in out and open spots, just right there on the surface of things. So you're not gonna get away with cutting right up against the plastic. I mean, you shouldn't do that anyways, but yeah, just saying. And you can always follow my tutorial if you don't want to worry about that stuff. It's right here. Anyways, let's talk about the look of the kit. I think it looks fantastic. I really love Hajime Kotoki's redesigns when it comes to any kit really. His legs, this kit is quite small, but his legs proportionally are quite long, and the ankle armor, if you just take a quick second to just look at the size of the ankle armor, they're huge, but I think it's awesome. And the feet are also just enormous, but I think it really fits the design of the Deathscythe, and just everything is great. I love the proportions, I love the colors, it all works out really well. The only proportion that I think needs, or that I would like changed if I ever saw this changed, is the head. I think it's a little bit squished and wide. I would like it just a little bit slimmer, a little bit sleeker, but that's about it. As for the construction of the kit, it's a very simple kit, guys. It goes together unbelievably quick. It only took me a day to build this kit, just building it, and that's kind of unheard of for me with master grades. I like to take my time and really enjoy the kit, but man, this guy was just going together like no other. The inner frame is very master grade, but there's like no detail on the inner frame. It's just there to serve its articulation purpose, which isn't bad, but it just means there's fewer parts in there to fill out details. And I did have one particular fitting issue on this guy, which is very rare for Bandai, but in the head, the face plate and the red chin part go together, and then you plug it into a gray piece on the back, and it just would not plug in. I made sure all the nubs were nice and flat and everything was there to be able to fit together, but it just wouldn't go on there, and it would fall out constantly. I'd give it a little tickle and it would just fall out. So I ended up having to glue that in. And the yellow cheek parts in there, they don't really snap into anything. They just sort of sit in there, and then once you put the face or the head together, then they're just held in there by the fact that other pieces are not letting it fall out. So you may want to glue those in. I don't really see them falling out, but just in case anything happens, I probably would glue those in. I might actually go back and glue that before I set it on my shelf. And the other sort of building issue, I don't know, I don't really like to call this an issue just because it's something you just should do when you build, is there's a lot of mold lines on this guy, more so than many other Bandai kits I have built, and they're really easy to knock out, but if you don't get rid of them, then they're gonna make your kit pretty ugly. So there's a few mold lines on the ankles, on the arms, a bit on the head. They're just kind of everywhere on this kit, but they're really not that bad. And if you know how to remove mold lines, which is really easy, then it shouldn't be an issue. I'll be making a tutorial on how to remove mold lines soon, but in the meantime, there's plenty of other tutorials out there, so feel free to check those out. So enough of me blabbing. I've blabbed quite a bit in this intro. I know it's been kind of long, but let's go ahead and get in closer and we'll talk more about the articulation. So here we are closer with Mr. Deathscythe. That's what he likes to go by. And as you can see, very nice kit, very nice looking, especially with those decals. I feel like if you don't put any decals on this guy, he would be very plain. But with the decals here, he looks great. I'll give you guys a little bit closer look at the chest here with those sticker decals. The arm here. As you can see, I really don't think they look that one looks pretty bad. I didn't stick that one down all the way. But yeah, just if you make sure to push them down all the way and hit it with a top coat from a distance, they will look perfectly fine. So I did paint the cameras on the head and in the his little cock camera here. I did paint that and the eyes as well, but they do give you stickers for those. The eye and camera piece here are all one big clear piece that actually goes from the eyes to the front camera and all the way to the back camera, so that's really nice. The head here can move up and down. It's on a hinge and it's on a ball joint, so pretty decent. It can't look up too far, which is kind of interesting. There's nothing really hindering it. I think it's running into the backpack there. Kind of hard to see, but he can't really look that far up, but he can look really nicely down his chest, which is great. Again, as you can see, not a lot of panel lines here, actually just none at all on any part of this kit really, but again, I think that works out for the Deathscythe. The arms here can swing out. Pretty typical master grade styling. The shoulder armor here is actually part of the arm, which is kind of strange, but okay, I guess that can happen. I've not really had that happen, but it can only really go up about that high, which allows the arm to get up about that high. So not the best, but you can kind of twist it and get it up a little bit higher. But because of the size of the shoulder armor and the fact that it's actually part of the arm and not separate, kind of hinders it a bit. The arm has a double ball joint, or a double hinge, excuse me, but it can only really get to there because of the design of this armor, so not that great, just a little bit past 90. The hand here is on a bit of a hinge. I think that's just because the peg going from the peg to the ball joint is actually quite long, so you're just kind of moving it on that ball joint, but that yellow piece is supposed to just be floating in there, so it's supposed to move back and forth like that. Otherwise, it's on a ball joint, and you'll have a single ball jointed thumb with interchangeable fingers. The chest here is on a double ball joint, and you can open up the cockpit really easily. I love that about the wing kits. The cockpits just hinge open. It's so nice. In there, you might be able to see Mr. Dual Maxwell in there. Bless his heart. Such an upbeat and energetic guy who's really outgoing, which is kind of ironic because of the fact he pilots a Gundam literally called the Deathscythe. So I always felt like either Troa or the guy who piloted the Shenlong, I can't remember his name, would have fitted better in this Gundam. But hey, we love Duo. He's great. As for the skirt armor, we do have a couple of issues here. The front skirt armor is fine. It moves just like really nicely. But the side skirts are on a ball joint and they're somewhat connected. They fall off sometimes, but the back skirts just are really, really loose. I mean, this is the main issue here. You see how the connection there is sort of shaped to fit the ball joint? Well, Bandai, if you make that hole the same size as the ball joint, that means that there's nothing really holding it in place. The point of a ball joint is to press against parts that are slightly bigger. So yeah, those fall off all the time. They may not fall off during this review because I've got some paint on them, or some top coat on them, but otherwise, when you're building it and when you're just trying to pose it and stuff, yeah, they always come off. Otherwise, the skirt armor looks really nice, and of course you've got that cock camera there, so that's good. The legs, there's no sort of hip swinging or anything fancy like that. It's just on a swivel, kind of hard to get up there, but it can go pretty high. It can go out, but not very far because of the skirt armor there. I also, just real quick, I like the construction of the skirt armor here. I like that the gray part kind of is layered on that white part, and these two white parts are layered. That's really cool. You have a double knee bend with some moving armor, which looks really nice. The armor part here seems loose. It's not going to fall off, but it does kind of, I don't know, you can hear that. It just kind of wiggles. It's weird though. I don't understand why. It's pegged in there with a peg and a tab, and yet something on there is loose. I don't know. I watched a few reviews of this kit before reviewing it now, so I could find out if it was just my kit or if this was a regular problem, and it seems to be a regular problem. So down here on the ankle armor, it's a double ball joint, which seems limited, but you can actually get the foot in really nice positions. There's a toe hinge, so that's good, and it can go up actually slightly, and there's actually like a spiky toe hinge here, which really serves no purpose whatsoever. I don't really know the purpose of that. Speaking of these spikes, they're actually quite sharp, so just be careful while building. I did grab, I think it was the knee part, kind of like this while reaching for it, and it actually quite hurt, so just be careful there. On the backpack here, very simple backpack. You just got, each of these are on a ball joint, and you can actually pull them out to move them, or you can push them in to sort of lock them in place. Works really well. And then each of these fins can go up and down, and then each of these thrusters are on ball joints. So yeah, overall, Really good movement. Unfortunately, the part of the kit that's lacking movement is the upper torso and the arms, which you kind of want, especially with the Deathscythe, because it wields a giant scythe. And to have really good arm movement is kind of vital. So it does hurt a little bit in that department, but it's not bad. So now let's take a look at his accessories. We'll start off with the smaller stuff. So first off, we've got an action-based adapter that will plug up right under his crotch. We've got a little 1:100 duo Maxwell here. It's facing the wrong way. There you go. Look at the camera, please. And just a little kind of random side note. This is the figure that comes with the old HG 1:100 Deathscythe Hell from back in the 90s. This is just one that my fiance never finished painting. And is that not the same mold? Except for the hair, of course, but I'm pretty sure that's the same mold. I don't know. Anyways, just kind of a random side note there. Next up, I'm actually going to show you the decals here, because specifically the dry transfers, because you actually get a couple of optional ones here. You get like Operation Meteor, this really cool one with the Gundam Deathscythe name there, Colony's Liberation Organization, and the designation of the mobile suit number. As you can see on mine, I actually used the D1 on the ankle armor there. I thought it looked pretty cool. But yeah, a lot of cool optional decals here, so make sure to keep those. Next up, you get a bunch of hand options. So you get holding or open splayed fingers here, hands with a peg in it for holding the Deathscythe, or the scythe I should say, not the whole Gundam, come on now. A couple of holding fingers with no peg in them. At first I thought these were useless because these were normally used for rifles or Gatling guns or beam sabers mainly, but the Deathscythe doesn't use beam sabers. But I found that these actually come in use better with holding the scythe in combination with one of these with a peg in it. So you have one of the hands with a peg holding the Deathscythe, or holding the scythe securely, and then you have another one without a peg, just sort of faking holding it so that you can get that arm in more versatile positions. So those are all good. Then you get one of his main armaments here, which is the Buster Shield, and I really like this weapon. As you can see, I put the Gundam's designation on the shield itself. I thought that looked pretty cool. I really like this weapon. I just seem to really like these pincer type weapons, the Blitz's weapon and some other UC grappling weapons I always really liked. The pincers here can open, and the sides open and close like this. They're actually on a gear system, so when I move the left one, you'll see the right one move. As you can see, it's really cool. Then you got a couple of tabs in here to lock it together in case you want to keep it like that. It'll just plug right onto the arm via that peg, and it works really well. So yeah, just super cool weapon. And I don't know if this redesign is supposed to shoot this out, but in the TV version and the Deathscythe Hell in the TV version, this Buster Shield is actually a lot smaller and has just a small beam effect dagger coming out, and he shoots this at enemies. It rams into them, they explode. This seemingly explodes too, but he always seems to have it in the next scene, so I don't know what's up with that. It's called movie magic. But in any case, yeah, it would have been cool if this one were meant to shoot out, if it came with a sort of wire or some sort of stand or something to have him shooting it out. But I don't think it's meant to, because it comes with this really large beam effect part, which is really nice. And this just seems too big to be something shot out. So I think he just uses this as a regular beam kind of saber weapon. So it just plugs in there via a tab and looks really nice. Now I'm going to shortly talk about the beam effect parts here. This is the one for the scythe. They're really nicely colored and shaped. I really like the color. It's a nice bright neon. Both of mine are slightly bent. Unfortunately, I'll fix that with some hot water. But my issue with these is they're not very sharply detailed. As you can see, the sculpting and the details on them are actually quite soft. So they end up looking not very menacing. I would have just liked the spikes a little bit sharper, and the actual color on them is a little cloudy. They're not 100% clear, which makes them look unique, but at the same time, they do look a little not very intimidating. So it would have been better if the sculpting on these were a little more menacing, but you still get them. They're still nice and big, so I'm not going to complain too much. Then finally, how would he be the Deathscythe without his scythe? This is a very nicely detailed weapon here. It's bigger than he is, and yeah, the construction of this was actually really nice. It's only about 4 parts. The main shaft part is just one big part, and then you just kind of cap it off with some of these little details. So I just thought that was very nice. You didn't have to worry about any seams or anything like that. So you've got slots going all the way up and down the front part here, so you can hold that at any point. And this is so unbelievably light, as you can imagine, even with the beam effect part, which just plugs in here, that he really has no issue holding this. The joints are plenty strong, and the hands are plenty strong as well to hold this guy up. So again, really nice. You also get a adapter to put on his back to hold the scythe, and it just plugs in to the backpack and actually holds it at a bit of an angle. As you can see, this was on the back. It would hold it at this sort of 45-degree angle, just to give it some flair, because it would look pretty derpy if it was just on his back straight up and down. And that's it for his accessories. Not a lot, but then again, the Deathscythe doesn't need a lot. It only really uses its scythe and sometimes its buster shield. It would have been very strange if they gave us a beam rifle with this guy. But I'm gonna go ahead and zoom out here, and I'll talk about my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on the kit: if you love the Deathscythe design, but you hate those bat wings, then this is the kit for you. And this seems to be the only kit for you, really, because as far as I know, Bandai has never made a version of the Deathscythe that isn't the Deathscythe Hell besides this one. So I really find it strange that Bandai just never made kit versions of the TV versions of the Gundam wing kits, even in high grade form. Here's hoping they do in the revived style. I would definitely buy those immediately, and I'm sure many people would. Maybe Gundam Wing just isn't that popular in Japan, I'm not sure. Mark my words though, there will be at least an announcement for the high grade Deathscythe Hell, because if that Love Phantom, the Build Divers Love Phantom, isn't a red flag for the release of that kit, then I don't know what is. And I'll get that kit actually, just because I love building Revive kits. They're just so much fun, and they're just such high quality kits. So the bat wings won't stop me from enjoying another Revive kit. As for this kit, I just really love it. I think it looks great. I'm so glad to finally have it in my collection. Just a side note, I know the Deathscythe is usually always put up in the air, mainly because of the bat wings, but I think this kit looks really good just standing there and doing a lot of ground poses. So I'm going to do a few of those in the spinning base shots, and you guys can decide for yourself if that looks better than in the air, but I think it looks really good just standing on the ground here, mainly because it doesn't have giant wings. So it just looks like a nice ground melee unit. But aside from that, not much more to say on this kit. It's really nice. The only real negatives I can think of are the fitting issues on the head, mold lines, and the fact that it doesn't have a lot of surface detail. I don't know. I mean, that's sort of a subjective thing. If you like a lot of surface detail on your kit, then yeah, this kit's going to come off as a bit plain. But if you're like me and you think less is more, and especially for the wing kits and their crazy elegant designs, I think you'll really enjoy this kit. It's very, very nice. It's a nice, solid master grade. So that's it from me. I don't really have much else to say on the kit. So thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Bye-bye.